Paul Michael Glaser was the hot-headed detective Starsky who wore tight jeans and became a 70s sex symbol. Then his life fell apart. His wife got HIV from a blood transfusion. She infected their 2 children. After watching his daughter die at age 7 and his wife at 47, he vanished from Hollywood. Today, at 82, he looks nothing like the star you remember. His face tells the story of a man who survived hell. He's still acting occasionally, but what he's doing now with his artwork has left fans stunned. Paul Michael Glaser was born on March 25, 1943, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, while World War II was still tearing the world apart. His father, Samuel, was a respected architect, not just designing homes but also restoring Boston's old synagogues between 1946 and 1952. His mother, Dorothy, was the daughter of Russian immigrants. She had once acted in small theater shows and kept over 200 classic plays on their bookshelf. Their home on Brattle Street, just a short walk from Harvard, was filled with books, debates, and dinner conversations with professors. It was a home built on ideas, and young Paul soaked it all in. Paul had an older sister, Priscilla, who unknowingly pulled him into acting. When she starred in The Crucible in 1951, Paul was just 8. She practiced her lines all the time, and though Paul found it annoying at first, he started memorizing them too. One night, Priscilla caught him performing a dramatic speech from the play in front of their dog. Instead of teasing him, she started helping him act. She coached him every Sunday and got him involved backstage. By the time Paul was a teenager, he had already helped with props, cued actors, and watched dozens of plays from behind the curtain. When Priscilla died in 1990, Paul took a 3-year break from acting. She had been his first teacher. Paul's Jewish upbringing also played a big part in his development. He attended Temple Beth Shalom 3 times a week until he was 16. His grandfather Ira, a violinist who had fled Russia in 1911, lived with them and played haunting folk music. His father hosted Friday night debate tables, where Paul had to argue his interpretation of the Torah. At his bar mitzvah in 1956, instead of a simple reading, Paul performed a 12-minute dramatization with characters, voices, and staging. The rabbi told the congregation to remember that moment. Paul wasn't just reading stories, he was bringing them to life. In high school, Paul stepped on stage for real. He played George in Our Town in 1958. A famous director happened to be in the audience and left a note praising the lanky, intense young man. In his junior year, Paul played Biff in Death of a Salesman and moved people to tears. Behind the scenes, he trained hard, spending 37 weekends learning stage combat. For his senior project, he played Hamlet and even memorized the entire play. The school extended the run to 5 nights, and every show sold out. One local paper said, Paul had something that even seasoned actors struggle to find: honesty and control. In 1961, Paul moved south to attend Tulane University. It was a big change from intellectual Cambridge. At first, he focused only on English literature, but then came a twist. Legendary theater teacher Alvina Krauss saw him perform at a poetry reading. She offered to coach him every Tuesday morning at 5:30 a.m. Even after she left, she kept sending him letters and advice. Paul doubled in theater and English and worked as a research assistant to a professor who connected Shakespeare to modern acting. Paul spent 26 weekends studying 17th century manuscripts. His senior thesis was so good, it got published in a top drama journal, something no undergrad had done before. After Tulane, Paul earned his Master of Fine Arts in Acting and Directing from Boston University in 1967. This was during a creative boom in theater, and Paul soaked in everything: classics, modern plays, and intense stage work. He performed 5 summers of repertory theater, switching roles night after night. He worked at Tufts, Williamstown, and even got injured backstage, ending up in the hospital for 6 weeks. He played heavy roles like Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment and Thomas in The Ladies Not for Burning, which he later called his favorite. One night during a performance gone wrong, he reminded himself to treat every show like a rehearsal. That mindset freed him. But life wasn't easy. In New York, he worked as a waiter and bartender to make ends meet. He shared small apartments, lived on scraps, and barely got by. In 1968, when he tried to register with the Actors Union, he found out another actor already had his name. He had to go by Michael Glaser until 1973, when that actor died. Only then could he legally use the name Paul Michael Glaser. His big break came in 1968 on Broadway, in a play called The Man in the Glass Booth. It was deep and intense, directed by Harold Pinter and starring Donald Pleasence. Paul wasn't the star, but he held his own. He learned about silence, tension, and restraint, the tools that would define his acting style. Then came Butterflies Are Free in 1969. Paul played Ralph Austin. The show ran for over 1,100 performances. It was a smash. His co-star Blythe Danner even won a Tony. This success brought Hollywood calling. Paul Michael Glaser's first big break came in a daytime soap opera called Love is a Many-Splendored Thing. It ran on CBS from 1967 to 1973. But Glaser joined in 1969. He played Dr. Peter Chernak, a strange and rebellious doctor who slept in his lab, cooked sausages over a Bunsen burner, and seduced nurses. It was a wild role. The show had originally focused on interracial romance, but network censors didn't like that. The original writer, Erna Phillips, quit over the interference. Only 7 full episodes are known to exist today because CBS erased many tapes to reuse them. For Glaser, this soap opera was his doorway into television after doing years of stage work. It gave him experience, exposure, and a paycheck. Then, in 1971, he got his first film role. He played Perchik in Fiddler on the Roof. It was a huge movie, the biggest of the year, earning $83.3 million worldwide on a $9 million budget. It got 8 Oscar nominations and won 3. Glaser's role was supposed to go to Israeli actor Asi Dayan, but Dayan was replaced because he struggled with English. Perchik was a student revolutionary who falls in love with Hodel, the daughter of the main character, Tevye. The film was shot in England and Croatia. A song Glaser recorded for the movie, Any Day Now, was cut from the final version, but later appeared in a re-release. This role made people in the industry notice him. He wasn't just a TV guy anymore. Glaser followed that success with several guest spots on hit TV shows between 1972 and 1974. He showed up in Cannon, Kojak, The Streets of San Francisco, The Sixth Sense, and The Rockford Files. On The Waltons in 1973, he played a troubled pilot named Todd Cooper, who had to make an emergency landing on Walton's Mountain. His character had a pregnant wife and a fear of becoming a father. All of these roles helped him stay visible and sharpen his skills. At that time, he was living in a one-room cabin with his dog Max in the Hollywood Hills. That's where he rode out the struggle of being a working actor, trying to get his big moment. That same period, he landed a part in the 1972 movie Butterflies Are Free, credited as Michael Glaser. He played a character named Ralph. This was interesting because Glaser had already performed the same role in the Broadway version from 1968 to 1969. The film starred Goldie Hawn and won Eileen Heckart an Oscar. It told the story of a blind man who moves out on his own and finds love. Doing the role on both stage and screen gave Glaser a deep understanding of how to adjust a performance for the camera. It was another step in his growth as an actor. By 1974, Glaser was ready for more. He got a lead role in a TV movie called Trapped Beneath the Sea, based on a real-life submarine accident from 1973. The film aired on October 22, 1974, and starred Lee J. Cobb, Martin Balsam, and Glaser as Jack Beach. The movie showed the terrifying experience of 4 men stuck underwater. Glaser did his own stunts and endured tight, uncomfortable shooting conditions. Only his character and 1 other survived in the story. The film earned a solid 6.6 rating on IMDb and proved Glaser could handle dramatic intensity. It also put him in the spotlight alongside Hollywood veterans. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1974, Glaser auditioned for a new cop show. He beat out hundreds of other actors to win the role of Detective Dave Starsky in Starsky and Hutch. This was his breakthrough. His earlier roles had shown range and discipline, but Starsky and Hutch demanded both grit and emotional depth. That's what the producers were looking for. Glaser had training from Boston University and a strong theater background. That made him stand out. They needed a street-smart cop with a heart, and Glaser gave them exactly that. When Glaser met David Soul, who would play Hutch, their chemistry was immediate. Both actors felt it. Soul later said, "There was an instinctive thing." Glaser agreed. They shared similar values and a passion for the craft. But it wasn't all harmony. Glaser admitted he was competitive and used every trick he knew in the first season. Soul said it was a healthy kind of competition, not petty. Their performances had energy and tension, which helped the show feel real. They pushed each other to do better, and it worked. Glaser didn't just act. He built the character of Starsky piece by piece. Starsky wasn't a typical TV cop. He was fast-talking, emotional, and full of personality. Glaser made deliberate choices. He perched on desks, gestured wildly when excited, and wore tight jeans that became a fashion trend. He made Starsky feel like a real person, not just a script. He also showed vulnerability, which was rare for male characters at the time. Starsky cared deeply for victims, for his partner. That emotional openness helped the show stand out. There was one thing Glaser didn't love: the car. The red Ford Gran Torino with the white stripe was flashy, and Glaser hated it. He thought it looked silly and said undercover cops would never drive something that obvious. He called it the striped tomato. He even tried to damage it during filming, scraping it, bumping into dumpsters, and wearing it down on purpose. Still, the car became a star of the show. Ford even released 1,305 replica cars in 1976, and they sold out fast. Starsky and Hutch premiered on April 30, 1975, as a TV movie, and it was an instant hit. ABC turned it into a series by September. It ran until 1979. The show got a Golden Globe nomination and won a People's Choice Award in 1976. It also became a full-blown cultural phenomenon. There were toys, games, lunchboxes, and even fashion lines based on the characters. Fan clubs sprang up everywhere, even outside the United States. The show was syndicated internationally and found big audiences in the UK, Australia, and Europe. Glaser and Soul became global stars. Paul Michael Glaser was at the height of his fame when his life took a heartbreaking turn. Just 1 year after Starsky and Hutch ended in 1979, he married Elizabeth Meyer on August 24, 1980. Everything seemed perfect. But by the next summer, their world started to unravel. In August 1981, Elizabeth gave birth to their daughter, Ariel. What should have been a happy day became a nightmare. She began hemorrhaging badly during labor and needed an emergency transfusion, 7 pints of blood to save her life. But one of those pints was infected with HIV. Back then, no one tested blood for it. AIDS had barely entered the conversation. For years, the Glazers didn't know what was slowly happening to them. Ariel looked like a healthy child at first, and they went on to have a son, Jake, in 1984. But in 1985, Ariel started getting sick, one strange illness after another. Eventually, doctors ran an HIV test, more as a formality. The results were devastating. Ariel had AIDS, so did Elizabeth, so did Jake. Paul was the only one who tested negative. Elizabeth had passed the virus to Ariel through breastfeeding and to Jake during pregnancy. They were told not to tell anyone. Doctors literally warned, "The world is not ready." So they kept it a secret. Elizabeth was terrified people would see her as a danger to their kids. Paul, trying to protect his family, stayed quiet too. Ariel died in 1988, just after her 7th birthday. Elizabeth was heartbroken, but refused to back down. She wanted to fight for other children like hers, but the media soon caught wind of their story. In 1989, the National Enquirer started digging. Reporters were calling, asking questions. Someone followed them. The paper offered $25,000 for a photo. That's when Paul and Elizabeth decided to go public. They gave their story to the Los Angeles Times, on their terms. Elizabeth said, "If our story is going to come out, we wanted it to come out our way." In February 1990, they appeared on 60 Minutes. It was one of the first times a well-known American family spoke openly about AIDS on national TV. Viewers saw a mother and father grieving their daughter and fighting for their son. Paul admitted he'd once been afraid to even hug his kids. "It's an irrational fear," he said. Elizabeth's words were even stronger. She said, "No one believed AIDS could affect mothers who drive carpools." The interview broke the stigma. They weren't addicts. They weren't strangers. They were just a family who had suffered through something unimaginable. Elizabeth didn't stop there. She co-founded the Pediatric AIDS Foundation along with 2 close friends. They wanted answers. They wanted research. They wanted to save children. Paul, more reserved, stood beside her. At their first benefit, hosted by Columbia Pictures, he gave a speech thanking the friends and co-workers who had quietly supported them. Hollywood hadn't turned its back. In fact, it had rallied. The foundation moved quickly. They brought in scientists. They held think tanks. They asked tough questions, like why only some HIV-positive mothers passed the virus to their babies. Elizabeth traveled to Washington. She fought for funding. Her most powerful moment came in 1992, when she stood on stage at the Democratic National Convention. She told the world exactly what had happened to her family. She demanded action. But tragedy struck again. On December 3, 1994, Elizabeth died from complications related to AIDS. She was 47. Paul lost his wife, and Jake lost his mother. But her work didn't die with her. The foundation was renamed in her honor, the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. It's still saving lives today. Through it all, Paul never gave up on his family or his career. Even during Starsky and Hutch, he was exploring a new path, directing. Between 1977 and 1979, he directed 5 episodes. He had a feel for suspense and character psychology. One of the episodes, Sweet Revenge, became the emotional series finale. Paul said he didn't follow formulas. He relied on instinct and the chemistry that already existed between the characters. After the show, his directing career took off. Michael Mann brought him in to direct Miami Vice, which got him an Emmy nomination. He went on to direct Band of the Hand, and later, popular shows like Judging Amy, Las Vegas, and Criminal Minds. His shift behind the camera gave him control, something he rarely had as an actor. That control was something he had struggled with during Starsky and Hutch. Off-screen, there was tension. Glaser and co-star David Soul often clashed with producers Aaron Spelling and Leonard Goldberg. Glaser believed in character depth. The producers cared more about commercial appeal. "They would glad hand us," he recalled. "Say yes, but never listen." The long shooting days, 12 to 16 hours, only added to the pressure. He felt like a cog in a machine. His vision and theirs just didn't align. "From their point of view," he said, "actors say the lines, get paid, and should be happy." Paul Michael Glaser was once best known as Detective Starsky from the hit 70s show Starsky and Hutch. But by 1986, he was stepping into a whole new world, one that had nothing to do with chasing bad guys on TV. A movie called The Running Man was in big trouble. The production had already burned through $8 million over budget, and it was only 8 days into filming. Directors kept dropping out. That's when Glaser was asked to jump in with just 2 days to prepare. He had barely any creative control, but he still took the job. Arnold Schwarzenegger later said the film could have been a $150 million blockbuster, but it was totally screwed up because a first-time director like Glaser wasn't given enough time. Even so, Glaser held the project together. He didn't make excuses. He delivered. And that was the beginning of his directing career. A few years later, in 1992, Glaser directed The Cutting Edge, a romantic sports comedy about a tough hockey player and a spoiled figure skater. It made just over $25 million in theaters. Not a smash hit, but something about it stuck. Audiences loved the chemistry between the leads. Critics were mixed, but Gene Siskel pointed out that their banter made the movie work. Glaser used clever tricks to hide the actors' lack of skating skills. Slow motion, quick cuts. It all gave the film a style of its own. Over time, the movie became a cult classic. It became a favorite at slumber parties, a VHS everyone wanted to own. Glaser had created something that went far beyond its budget or reviews. Then came a different kind of challenge. In 1994, Glaser went to Kenya to shoot The Air Up There, a basketball comedy starring Kevin Bacon. It was a $17 million project filmed across Kenya, South Africa, and even Canada. The story followed a coach trying to recruit a hidden talent from a remote village. It was funny, sometimes awkward, and full of cultural clashes. The critics didn't like it. It got just 21% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it still made $21 million. More importantly, it proved Glaser wasn't afraid of big challenges. He could shoot in unfamiliar places with unfamiliar people and still finish the job. 2 years later, things got weird. Glaser took his son to an NBA All-Star game and ended up chatting with someone from Shaquille O'Neal's team. On a whim, Glaser said Shaq should play a genie. That offhand comment turned into Kazam. Glaser had only 10.5 weeks to write, prep, and start shooting. The script was finished in 6.5. The movie cost $20 million. It made only $18.9 million. The reviews were brutal, but Glaser managed to finish it, despite chaos on set, including rewriting the final act while filming it. It wasn't a hit, but it showed again how adaptable Glaser could be, even under insane pressure. Before all that, Glaser had quietly built his skills behind the camera on Miami Vice. In the mid-1980s, he directed 3 episodes of the show, including the fan-favorite Smuggler's Blues. Critics called them some of the best in the entire series. He used visual storytelling, music, looks, silence, to say more than dialogue ever could. One reviewer said his episodes made points through artful composition. That eye for visuals, that instinct for tone, it all started there. Outside of work, Glaser's life was filled with personal battles. He had lost his wife Elizabeth and their daughter to AIDS. In 1996, 2 years after Elizabeth's death, he married Tracy Barone, a producer. They had a daughter, Zoe, in 1997. Glaser was now a father again, raising Zoe while still caring for his son Jake, who was born with HIV. For a time, it looked like a new beginning, but by 2007, Glaser filed for divorce, asking for joint custody. Through it all, he stayed deeply connected to the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. He never stopped fighting for the cause his late wife had begun. In 2004, Glaser returned to acting in a serious way. He joined Third Watch, playing Captain Jack Steeper. His character had a chilling nickname, Steeper the Reaper, and he lived up to it. In one scene, a firefighter asks if the rumors about him are true. Glaser's character just smirks and says, "Is that what they call me?" He was firm, commanding, but not without heart. It was his first big recurring TV role in years. He wasn't Starsky anymore. He was something tougher, older, wiser, but he wasn't done. In the 2010s, Glaser joined the cast of Ray Donovan, a dark, smart drama with Liev Schreiber and Jon Voight. It was nothing like his earlier work. Here, he played Alan, an older, complicated man caught in the messy world of Hollywood fixers. The show had an 8.3 rating on IMDb, and Glaser fit right in. Michael Glaser surprised many in 2018 when he stepped into the spotlight again. Not on stage or screen, but in an art gallery. On April 24th, at age 75, he launched his very first United States solo art exhibition in Hollywood. It was called Act 3, and for him, it marked a whole new chapter. First, he was an actor, then a director, and now a visual artist. His paintings and digital art had taken years to complete, each piece filled with emotion, color, and a personal story. Many of these stories came from grief, especially after he lost his wife Elizabeth to AIDS in 1994. Painting became his therapy, his way of healing, his way of understanding life. The art he shared was full of bold colors and abstract shapes. Critics noticed the contrast, bright strokes of joy mixed with hints of pain. When asked why he was starting something so new so late in life, he simply said, "What life occurs. It's what happens." He didn't plan it. He just stayed open. That night, the gallery buzzed with celebrities and old friends. They came to see not just the actor they remembered, but the artist he had become. But Glaser's artistic rebirth didn't stop at painting. Years before the exhibition, he had already begun to explore another side of himself, as a writer. After the chaotic experience of directing Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal, which he once called a total fluke, Glaser turned away from big studio films. He wanted more control, more meaning, so he started writing his own stories. One of those stories became a novel called Crystalia and the Source of Light. It was originally a screenplay, but the technology at the time couldn't bring it to life. So instead of waiting, he turned it into a book. It follows a 14-year-old girl on a fantastical journey. He even commissioned custom illustrations. The book, which you can still find on Amazon, was praised for its imagination and emotional depth. Glaser later revealed that this story also came from his pain. But more than that, it came from his hope, from transformation, from finding light in dark places. And that was just one of his many projects. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, he wrote several screenplays and TV scripts that never made it to production. Still, he kept writing, he kept creating. In 2023, he said he was working on a memoir, a book that would finally tie all the pieces together, from Hollywood fame to heartbreak to healing through art. As of 2025, that memoir hasn't been released, but many are still waiting for it.